Hi there and welcome to my video series on making a basic AI. We're going to try and work a little bit more. I've already got a series on YouTube, but what we're going to do this time is add a little bit more to it. Now, this is a follow-on from the spider tutorial that I've been doing, the tutorial series, and what I've done is I've added this start project to so you can have something to start with, but we're going to be using this this basic spider to work with for most of this tutorial once we get into the modeling part, into the adding the model part. So the GitHub link is in the description. You'll be able to just clone or download the entire repository and you'll get the starting code, the starting project just as it is here. And I'm using Unity 2019.2.8, but it should pretty much work on all of the 2018s and 2019s. So I'm just going to get started in this programming. We're going to get into the very first part of setting up a really simple AI. What I need you to do is, you'll see that we already have the map set up, so we're going to create ourselves the main AI enemy. So what we're going to do is we're just going to create an empty, and we're going to call this enemy, and this empty is going to be the base object, and the mesh is going to be attached on as a child. So this base object will have all of the scripts and components that it needs. The mesh itself, the spider, will just drag and drop basically into it and make a few changes just to get that synchronized up so that it works. So most of the work will be done here, and if you want to see my previous tutorial, which I'll link in the description too, you can go through in a bit more depth, but I'm going to try and go quite quick with this. So basically for the components that we need for this, we need some kind of collider. So what we're going to do is we're going to create the NavMesh agent first. So we have this NavMesh agent. This NavMesh agent, if we zoom in here, is kind of also the collider as well. Possibly if I put blue on there and I put green on here, that will make it a little bit easier for you to see. So the green line that you see around this is the actual NavMesh agent. Now I could go into more depth, but you can change different agent settings, but obviously ours isn't humanoid, but I'm going to leave it as humanoid just now, rather than muck around with it, and then we can get straight into doing some code. So the NavMesh agent is more or less all that you need. The enemy right here has the NavMesh agent, and we're going to add a script to it too, but as I mentioned before, the mesh goes on as a child of it, and then we can tweak it to get it to fit as we need it. So in order for us to see this, I'm going to create an empty, I'm going to create a mesh as a child of this anyway. So I'm going to create a capsule as a child of it, and you'll see by default the enemy and the capsule, they don't quite fit. We need to raise the capsule just slightly. So if I click on the capsule to set its position, what we can do is just set the position up, and if you see, we go up 1 unit, and that takes us to pretty much exactly the same as the enemy, the NavMesh agent here. So that gives us a rough idea. We'll be able to see that moving around as we start writing some code. So clicking on the enemy again, let's create our script. So we're going to create a new script. Oops, not going already, so go down to new script, and we're going to call this enemy AI. And then once this has been created, you'll see that this this enemy AI over here, the script, will open this up inside of Visual Studio. So I'm just going to double click this and open up Visual Studio, and we'll be up and running in a moment. So we're up with Visual Studio, and we're just going to get straight into this. So the NavMesh agent is the object that I need, and you'll notice as you start trying to type in to get the NavMesh agent or get a handle to the NavMesh agent, it doesn't exist. So I'll just type in using unityengine.ai to get access to that namespace, and then you'll see that NavMesh agent comes up. So we're going to get a handle to this NavMesh agent. I'm just going to call it nav, and inside the start we're going to get that nav component. So we're going to say nav equals get component and choose NavMeshAgent as the component, and then the round brackets at the end and a semicolon to finish. So this will get a handle to the NavMeshAgent component, and that allows us to access all of the functions within that NavMeshAgent component. And just to see that it's working, what we're going to do is we're just going to say nav.setDestination, and we're going to just type in let's get the center of the world, so we'll just say vector 3.0, and that will get the center of the world, just to make sure that this is all set up, because there's a couple other things we need to do before we start coding, just to make sure that everything is working. So jump back into Unity, that's all saved and it will compile. The key issue here is that we need to make sure that this NavMesh agent has a NavMesh to run on. If we make sure that we first of all have the enemy script on. If we run this, we'll get an error message down the bottom here. It will say set destination can only be called on an active agent that has been placed on the NavMesh, and that confused a lot of people in the first video series that I did. The key here is that we haven't generated a NavMesh. Now the reason I left you with an ungenerated NavMesh for the starter code is that you could customize these, and if you didn't go through these steps you won't know what's going on. So what we need to do is make sure that that the map, and I could do this individually with all of these, but I'm going to just click on the map and I'm going to mark it as static. Now there's a few, say yes, change children as well. There's a few other options with static where you can do things like just for the NavMesh or off mesh links, or whether you got global illumination and stuff, but by default it's easy just to say it's not going to move, so optimize this as much as you can to Unity Game Engine. So this marked everything within this map and all of its children as static. You notice the enemy was not one of those children, so that shouldn't be static as well. So in order to get the NavMesh baked and calculated to work out so the AI knows where to go, we need to open up the navigation window. So you'll find it under the window menu, click on AI and choose navigation. Mine's is normally docked up here, but if yours pops up as like a floating or something like that, then it's best to just dock it over to the right hand side next to the inspector. And then from there we just click on the bake tool. I mentioned earlier this is where we can set the radius and height and things of this this nav. It uses these widths as a way of working out exactly how close it can go to the object. For now, we want to just get straight to it, so we'll click on bake. It should take a few seconds, and then you'll see that there's this weird sort of green, bluish coloured map gets generated around it, and you'll see that you can see the little joints, and this basically is saying this is anywhere that's been marked by these polygons is where this AI can go. So the center of the world is over by here. In theory my code will set the destination to the center of the world, so I'm going to click on the enemy and just move him somewhere on the scene, and then I'm going to hit play, and then to see things happening I'm just going to click back on the scene view, and you can see that it's actually doing it. And because I've selected this guy, I can actually see the little line that he's going to follow in order to get to where he needs to be. I can be really annoying and move him somewhere else, and he'll continue to calculate his path and move back to it. Because I'm in scene view, I'm actually not in game view here, I can do this. So you can see it calculating the line and going back. So that's the absolute basics of setting up the NavMesh. Now we need to get some of the artificial intelligence part organized. So I'm going to stop this video and you can go into the next one where we start coding a little bit more on getting this thing working with a little bit of intelligence.